School District School Board comes to order. The board met in closed session and took no reportable action. Let's start with approval of our agenda order. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay. We're going to start with the consent calendar, and colleagues, you will note, and public, you may notice as well. The agenda setting committee has been using the consent calendar quite liberally. We've been putting a lot on there, and I think I can say we've been comfortable doing that, knowing that any community member or board member can pull any issue they'd like to discuss, but these are all things that we have had discussions about in prior meetings, or they are, minutes or whatnot. So approval of the consent calendar, or anyone need to pull anything?
Yes, ma'am. One, we have a card for substitute pay raise, which I believe is on the consent calendar, but I don't know which item.
Salary schedule?
Salary schedule, so S.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to pull item S.
I'd like to ask that we pull P, T, and U.
P, budget, T, external firms, U, legal services. So right now we have P, S, T, and U. Any others? Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent calendar with the exceptions of P, S, T, and U.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, those 4 items, we will move to the beginning of action items. Okay. Okay. Moving on, open forum. Looks like we have 2 cards, because that's in subject. Okay, right. Star Teach Out and Kimberly Eng Lee.
Can I pass something out?
I don't know, I think that's counted.
No, it's not. He's just messing with you.
It's an email, so I don't know that.
We can pass it around.
Okay.
Yeah, just,
These are ones that I spent my afternoon on. Yeah, you can take one of those.
Did you get one?
Okay. Well, about 15 years ago, we bought a 1-bedroom abandoned house that was built in 1927, and we have been working to be organized for about 15 years to fit 5 people, 2 border collies and a couple cats, drum kits and all sorts of stuff in it. And so I want to apply that, as painful as it is to be organized, and I know it's painful, a little bit of organization to a couple items that I've talked about before. The first one, which I emailed you, is the idea of having an annual school climate survey. And I know that surveys are problematic because you get all this data and what do you do with it? And so I made one that has 2 questions, and it would be an online anonymous survey. This one is focused towards the staff, but you could certainly do one for parents and students as well. And this one is, number 1, just tell us what you like about this school. And then it lists a bunch of things. And there's a column for comments as well. And then question number 2 is, what improvements would you like to see at this site? Same selection, and that's it. That's as simple as it is. In addition to that, I would really love to have a climate survey done at Fletcher at the beginning of the year, before even school starts, because I think there's been some damage done to the last issue about possibly not renewing a counselor. And so I think it would be useful to do that at Fletcher with our staff. And then the second item I talked about last time was this idea of trying to align the promise and our LCAP goals with our site council a little bit better, so that we actually use those people, and a little bit more, I think, in a higher level way. I've known people, great people, who have actually left site councils because they didn't feel they were doing meaningful work. And so what I did is lay out some examples. Basically, all I did was copy the Gunn Site Council agenda, and then I added 1 line of LCAP/promise goals, and I listed the 3 main ones that are relevant to the school. Not that business isn't, nor communication. Those are all things that are a little bit more at the district level. So I added those 3 columns, and then under each of the constituents, I put in some examples of things that they might report on under that category. And so for me, that's a monthly calendar of what we've actually done. I've never been on a site council. I'm on the PTA, the BTA exec board, but there's a column for us as well. And let's see. For example, on the PTA exec board, we might, under safe and welcoming schools, showcase student art and clubs at our PTA social events.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Star.
Thanks. Kimberly Angley.
Hi, I love Star's comments, great ideas. Hi, Kimberly Angley for the Palo Alto CAC. I wanted to come and just acknowledge the very good work that happened in this school year around dyslexia screening, awareness, the teaching strategies and tools. It was really great to be part of the dyslexia working group, to participate in the open dialogue, see people tackling really complex ideas, and commitment from staff at the sites across the district. We also see real sincere interest in redesigning professional development to match the district goals for inclusion, equity, and support for struggling students. And given the clear goals that the district has, an intent to really offer teachers the topics that have more depth over breadth. We support the return of a dedicated focus on equity with a systems level plan, the hiring of an MTSS coach, and shoring up of personnel to teach families and students how to do school better. Of course, I can't leave without asking, though, what would be done to tackle the barriers noted in last week's board packet for the dyslexia plan implementation, namely funding for professional development and a psychologist? And where are the funds to build capacity and programming called out in the vision plan for special education, since they're neither budgeted for next year nor noted as an exclusion? Our community has lived through many well-intentioned plans and promises. We'll see what next year brings. Have a happy summer.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, on to reports. Dr. Austin, Superintendent's report.
I was going to highlight a few of the things that we accomplished this year, but I think Kimberly just did a beautiful job, so thank you very much. And we are going to address some of the questions that she brought up also. But at this time, our staff is working on a project it's actually a branding project as we start to think about doing our work with websites and beyond. That starts with looking at your branding. And ironically, throughout the school year, I'd received some comments from teachers, staff members about our existing logo. And our logo is it's awesome. It's our logo is old school. Thank you. And it's also very difficult to replicate and to put in certain places and ways where it maintains the integrity of the intent that was behind it, meaning it doesn't translate to an embroidered shirt. It doesn't look good on letterhead. It is not the best representation at this point on our website. And we thought it was time to update. And since it's not an art project, it's a branding project, Derek located an Oakland-based firm called 99 Designs, and what they do is help you to get a lot of different designs from designers in a very short period of time, and then you can go through and decide what seems to make sense. A couple things before I have Derek show you seven of these designs that we've narrowed it down to so far, is you frame up a title for what you want people to respond to, and you give any parameters that you think are important. Our title was something to the effect of, that is our amazing current logo. No designer, by the way, came up with that one recently. We asked people to help us to create a logo and a brand for a top-rated school district in the state of California, and we underscored the importance of somewhere within the logo having a representation in whatever way made sense. That included the tree, and in our case, our tree is the Palo Alto tree, as you all know. We thought that that was pretty important. One last additional piece before I turn it over to Derek to walk you through some of these. I had some comments back about, well, we really want something that has kids in it. And after doing some additional research, we can't find any district that has a representation of kids' faces more specifically.
I looked far and wide.
We did look far and wide. So you won't see anything that resembles this specifically, but we're going to show you 7 options and then talk about what we think our staff work is and see if there are any concerns about this. So Derek, on to you.
Sure, so let's start with our current logo as it exists, because that was the baseline of where we started. So the first option that we can look at, I think, is the option I'm going to present that's closest to our current version. So closest, by closest I mean the shape of the tree is the same.
Oh, look, they're kids.
There are kids, yes. There are little kids in the middle that still kind of captures some of the student mentality and having some type of human being involved in our logo. So that's option 1. The next one goes to a very, very, very traditional type of logo. The traditional redwood tree with a traditional circle crest around the outside with the name of our school district. The third option is a complete departure from what we currently have. There's a human student in the middle and kind of abstract with the tree in the background and a different color scheme than we've seen on any of our sites. Idea number 4 gets into a little bit of combination of the both with a colored tree, and if you look closely, it's also people, it's humans tree that are with their arms reaching up to the sky and for high aspirations and kind of reaching for what's above. So the other piece on this is the font is different for the Palo Alto Unified School District. It's a sans serif instead of the serif that we've traditionally been using. Here's another take on the human tree, very similar but with more leaves and slightly different colors. Here's also a little bit more abstract, similar type of thing with humans in there. And the one that we're currently leaning to right now is the last option that is away from people. And I wanted to share what the designer wrote about this that I think helps tell the story about this one a little bit. So this logo was built from a combination of circle and a redwood tree. Circles are cut into up and down sections. The top of the circle represents the sky or aspirations and innovation, while the bottom of the circle expresses a solid ground and stability for the redwood tree, which kind of can equate to operations and fundamentals. The tree in the center represents our community, so it's kind of a mix of together of how both solid operations and a grounding allow the tree to grow towards the sky and reach some aspirational goals. So I thought it was kind of a good story that kind of is depicted in the logo. So those are the options that we have narrowed it down to at this point.
And there you go. Where's Bob Golden? And that's it. That's it. Couple things here. The important distinction is this is not an art project, it's a branding project. And those are very, very different things. So when we're looking at these logos, we're looking at something that can be easily reproduced in all those formats we've already talked about. I was watching the city council meeting last night because my life is that exciting. And you notice on the back of the city council wall, they have the actual metal cutout of their logo. And if you looked at the slides on their presentation, they all had the same logo. That's an example of branding pulled all the way through, and it's something that when I first arrived here, I was told we don't do a great job of, that we were hit and miss on different things. So we have a couple options. If we were looking for just a staff, if we were just going to go today, we internally are leading towards number 7. There's also options that we have that we could look for some additional kind of voting thing. what we are not looking for is a prolonged process. We really like to, we see this as really, it's a logo, and we'd like to do this with some pace to it over the summer and really get going, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
So a logo isn't agendized for today. I don't know if we're allowed to weigh in this way.
So how would you like to get some feedback then, Dr. Austin?
Well, there's a couple different things we could do. I think you probably could share if there's anything that is just off or anything that you want us to consider. So for an example, here would be a very specific example. A couple of the trees are oak trees. And even the people form an oak tree. If an oak tree is a non-starter for us, I'd like to just know that because
We're really a redwood.
because we're really a redwood tree.
So, but we can't really talk about it right now. So how would you like us to give you feedback? I mean, I used to do this for my work, and I would love to provide some feedback, but we can't tonight. So how would you like to get some feedback?
I was hoping you were going to say it was staff work, just go for it. Because that would be the easiest place to go. Otherwise, we're looking at, we will do this, if we ever do it, it would be in the fall.
Well, how about
Well, I mean, I think we can reach out to Dr. Austin, right? If he doesn't, if we don't all tell each other what we said and he doesn't, we can just reach out to him whether we're okay with staff proceeding or whether we would like to see some other process taken, and he can proceed
Or
based on the
even
info he
with-
gets.
Maybe a little bit more than that. We may be fine with staff proceeding, but we might have some feedback on how you proceed.
Great.
So why didn't
That's fine.
each person reach out to Dr. Austin as they see fit?
So let me ask a question. If we'd be okay saying this is staff work, but if you want to contact me, do it in the next few days. And if it seems like it's becoming more complicated than I expect, then I would have to bring it back in August. And if not, we would go with our conversation. Would that work?
I mean, I'm a little bit uncomfortable because I don't want to, I mean, it's a logo, right? So it's not a big deal. On the other hand, I don't want to treat this differently because it's not as consequential as some of the other things. I don't think if there was an issue of policy, we'd want to say to, everybody get to Dr. Austin, privately, and then Dr. Austin will synthesize that into an outcome. So, I mean, I'm comfortable just having the agenda setting committee decide whether this needs to come back to the board, and if so, how.
And board members still can discuss it with Dr. Austin. I mean, we discuss things all the time.
I mean, it is just a logo. However, if you really want to do branding with it, and we're going to use it everywhere, then what we don't want is people to be unhappy. So,
But we can't discuss it, so,
yeah, we can discuss it.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Tell you with certainty.
so agenda setting will decide whether or not it has to come back, but of course, when you have your regular meetings with Dr. Austin, you can discuss it with him if you want.
Now you know why we have a logo from the set.
No, we haven't talked
Okay.
about it for, I
All right.
don't,
That's it
Anything
from
else
our
there?
report. Nope.
Okay, our zero waste report.
Dr. Novak?
Yes, the city of Palo Alto has a zero waste goal of maximizing landfill waste diversion. And so we wanted to bring up Alva Spence and Rebecca Navarro to talk about PAUSD's efforts with zero waste.
Thank you, everyone. Behold the old logo.
Might be the last time you ever see it.
Soak it in. So this topic was a little bit more complicated to prepare than we expected for such a neat and tidy report, considering how zero waste has become this incredibly dynamic thing globally as well as locally. So what we're just going to do right now is take a look at what we have going on here in Palo Alto Unified, what's going on in the city, some value that we see in aligning ourselves with the direction that the city continues to pursue, and a little specific highlight on food services insofar as that group has a lot to do with the waste that we can control ourselves. So for context, the zero waste that we're talking about is not just getting everything out of the landfill into recycling or into compost. That is an important part of diversion, but we are really focusing on how we select products that have waste engineered out of them from the start, or packaging that minimizes waste. And there should also be some sort of collaborative element to the whole process. The City Council adopted a 95% diversion, landfill diversion goal by 2030, which is honestly just around the corner for something of that scale. And even though we are our own entity, separate from the city, we do feel like aligning our community, our school district community values with that of the city has a lot of meaning insofar as students participate in the community and they also come to school in the community. And we would like them to not feel that zero waste is something that happens in isolation just when you eat in a restaurant in Palo Alto or something like that. It's a community-wide value also embedded in school. For us, a significant opportunity exists in food services. A lot of waste that's generated on site does come from the students' homes onto the campuses. That is harder to control. What we can control more readily is what's going on in food services. And Alva is going to have you walk you through her costs and opportunities a little bit. I'll briefly just touch on the service costs. So we have landfill, compost, and recycling service, just like everybody else within the city of Palo Alto. As you know, since you're residents, recycling is free, and we have a cost for landfill that is 10% more than our cost for compost. These amounts are not like humongous amounts in the scale of the overall budget, but that is an awful lot of money to be spending on trash, especially when there are ways to not do it, and an awful lot of non-monetary value to not doing it as well. So Alva's going to talk about food service opportunities.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So currently, our annual spend on plastics, paper goods, aluminums, et cetera, that are used within the food service department is about $72,000 a year. And, you know, as we've looked at that through the Sustainability Schools Committee and the Green Teams and the Zero Waste Champions and a couple of other committees, we have the opportunity to move with the ordinance to either compostables or reusables. And so my task was to try and get a handle on what we thought our spend would be if we took everything that we currently do and moved it into a compostable dollar value. Compostables are much more expensive than our current items, and so that's why you see a $93,000 annual spend is our estimate for compostables. That does not include any of the potential charges for missorting that we will probably have, because we currently are not perfect in our sorting yet, but we're working toward that goal. We are also looking at taking the elementary level. This would have to be a phased-in process if we switch to a reusable program. There's no way I can take the whole district in one shot, but we are looking very hard at the elementary level because we can control that, and we currently control that. 5 elementary schools currently use reusable trays that we wash between JLS and Gunn High School. So we're looking at 7 more sites that we would need to take to that program, and then internally take away the packaging from the central kitchen and send the food bulk, and have to basically put the food out like everyone else does, you know, on an actual reusable tray with just a wax line paper, which would save us, I think, a tremendous amount of money, both in the amount of dumpster pickups, the amount of dumpsters that are on campuses, and you know, so it's something that we would really like to invest some time and get your opinions on. There is going to be some cost associated with going to reusables. The trays are going to cost some money. If we look at other options of cooking within a stainless steel unit from the central kitchen and sending it over in a sealed container, we are going to have to replenish some of those items. Even stainless steel sporks, which I have some examples of, not here tonight, but for the reusable working group that we're part of as well. We are going to need to replenish those. They tend to go home in the backpack. They get thrown in the trash by mistake. So, I mean, there's going to be a little bit of cost with replenishment. That's a little harder for me to gauge. Not so much at the elementary level. I think that one will be a little bit better because we have zero waste champions. We have green teams at each of those sites. The secondary level, I'm not even ready to entertain at this point because the campuses are so large and students can take their food and go in any direction. So that one will be a multifaceted issue with custodial, site councils, and probably some other groups as well as yourself. So that's what I can say about it. And Wendy, would you like to say anything from?
Good evening. I'm Wendy Hediger with the City of Palo Alto. I'm on the Zero Waste team, and I've been working with them on all kinds of zero waste issues for the schools for quite some time. So I've worked for the city since 2000. Oh, sorry. Is that okay? There you go. Sorry. A little bit taller. Sorry. So I'm here to give you a little bit of history about what we're doing. I've been with the city since 2000. I've worked with the schools since then. The schools have been recycling since I started. So that's fantastic. It's always been fun to work in Palo Alto. But when I started, it was a volunteer program. It was volunteers that ran the recycling program. They had kids that helped them take it out. So I found myself, anytime a volunteer left, I had to retrain them over and over. And so luckily we moved to a integrated system where the district, the custodial staff picked up and the recyclables along with the waste. And at the same time, our new hauler started and we got compost service. So we just integrated a 3-sort system in, and that turned out very well. It worked very well to have the custodial staff picking it up, and it's now kind of institutionalized into just how things happen in the district or at the schools. And so then the 3-sort system happened, and that came about the same time that the state mandated commercial recycling. So they mandated that 75% of the waste that's created in California needs to be either recycled, composted, or source reduced. Part of that, they mandated all commercial businesses that 4 cubic yards of garbage had to recycle. And then a few years later, they passed AB 1826 that required that all commercial businesses would need to compost. And so there comes a 3-sort system, but it was phased in pretty slowly. And as you know, Palo Alto has a zero waste goal. We wanted to get to a 90% diversion by 2021. We're at 80% right now, so we have a ways to go. And then because we wanted to push the envelope, we went to 95% diversion by 2030. So we're going to really need to figure out where to go from here. So we want to be compliant with state mandates, but we also want to go further because we recognize that, waste, it's not just a landfill issue. It's energy conservation. It's water conservation. There's litter. There's pollution. There's greenhouse gas emissions. There's all kinds of things wrapped up in waste. And we have our zero waste goal, and we're at 80% now with the ordinance, but really zero waste is not about recycling and composting everything. We need to redefine our programs and think about going upstream. We need to look at source reduction, which is preventing the waste in the first place, or making it reusable or repairable. And only if you can't do those things, then recycle and compost it. And so we are, at the city, we're really shifting away from trying to recycle and composting as much as possible. And we still want to do that. That's still very viable and very important. But as you know, all the issues we're having with the recycling markets right now, there's some really marginal materials that really aren't paying for themselves to get recycled. There's issues with that. Everything's not accepted anymore. like it used to be, and we're finding a hard time getting the markets for some of these marginal plastic items. They're a big litter problem, and they're big greenhouse gas emissions with disposables. So we want to move away from disposables. So there's a number of different policies we're looking at, only one of which we passed, council adopted last Monday, which was the disposable foodware ordinance, which comes, it's 3 phases. So they adopted it Monday, but I have to say they have to adopt it again next Monday. So it's like they have to do 2 readings. So we've got 1 reading next Monday. They did it unanimously. I don't think we're going to have a problem next Monday. So, sorry. Just making sure. But that's just phase 1. So we've banned plastic utensils, straws, stir sticks, and the little plastic items that aren't recyclable now are a litter issue. And really, frankly, we could have compostable options. So we've banned the plastic, said they have to be compostable, offered only upon request. But our next phase, we want to require that all dine-in has reusables. So this is our paradigm shift. We want to shift to reusables for dine-in, take away the rest of the plastic items, make sure the compostable items are ones that don't have the nasty chemicals like the PFAS chemicals and some of those. And then our third phase, hopefully, this is our stretch goal, is reusables for takeout containers. So, and that's just one of our policies. We're looking at deconstruction, salvage for reuse for the construction materials and some other issues as well. So that's really the direction we're moving forward in at the city, the community. And I have to say statewide, there's a lot of different communities doing that as well.
So, we have the very enjoyable task of getting thousands of people under the age of 10, in many cases, to try and do the 3-sort system properly on a very regular basis. And we are very excited that the city is moving toward reusables, and I guess our ask is just for everyone to continue to be sort of curious and open-minded as we look for ways to make PAUSD into as zero waste a school district as is possible, with all of this sort of beautiful example and support that we get from the city. We won't be subject to enforcement with the plastic foodware ban that just went into effect, but we still see a lot of value in aligning with that so that students carry the same experience wherever they go, school, home, out around town. And we're planning to continue working at the committee level to sort of build like a more structured framework now that City Council has halfway passed this. And we'll continue to go in this direction. And at some point, we'd like to come back with something more well-developed to bring to you actually for your formal endorsement. But for today, that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. And colleagues, just to reiterate what Ms. Navarro just said, the city ordinance, when it goes into effect in January, doesn't actually apply to the school district, although it's not like we're not going to be stretching for such things anyway. But we are doing that on our own timetable, and there probably will be exemptions. You may have read in the paper about some disability advocates being concerned about some of the requirements. So just be assured our students can access whatever it is they need. But I just wanted to make sure we all had heard that. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments for the crew. Ms. Baden-Caswell?
Yeah, Alva, do you know of other districts who are doing this successfully that had disposables and then moved to reusables?
Not yet. We're all kind of being pushed in the same direction. There's a lot of conversation. I spoke with a colleague in Oklahoma last week. I think right now we're actually leading, and we're kind of in the front group in terms of where we are. And so I'm getting a lot of questions as to, you know, how did you even get to having zero waste champions and, you know, green teams that actually bring things back into the lunchroom, and but no one is there yet. From the Sodexo side, I am actually looking at the university level because they are actually leading in terms of reusable containers and washing them, and how they actually are given to a college student. The college student is assigned a card, and once they bring it back, they take their food out, they bring it back and put it in an Aussie machine, and then it's actually scanned in, so when they go into the lunchroom, a new one is actually automatically available for them. So it's, the university level is far ahead of where we are.
So I seem to remember when I did an abroad program in France that they were using reusable, and I remember being surprised. So maybe there's some peers that we could reach out to in France or in Japan. I know they tend to use it. Maybe there's some other countries, I guess, if you're not seeing it here.
You know, I will, because I think this, wasn't the Sustainability Schools Committee approached by a family from?
Yes, Sweden.
Sweden, yes. So, I mean, there may actually be some that we can speak to. I will look into that.
Terrific, good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins? Mr. Drop?
One quick thing to follow up on Ms. Baton-Caswell. I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago I visited an elementary school in Richmond to look at their lunch program. They're transitioning to reusables, and so I'd be happy to put you in contact with them, because as a corollary, they told me, and they're going to send me some studies that they're commissioning about how switching to locally sourced food has decreased their carbon footprint, which I think goes very well in line. And lastly, Mr. Dauber pointed out that I have a disposable, but I will just say that it is compostable,
Sugar cane.
and I strongly believe in the message of zero waste.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really, Mr. Dauber?
I think I've said enough on this, Mr. Durop.
I have nothing to add other than a thank you for your work, and, you know, keep at it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Visual and Performing Arts Department overview.
I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Brown to introduce our guest.
Okay, thank you. As promised, tonight we have an update on the music and art departments turning into a VAPA department. And creating one VAPA department mirrors the organizational structure of many other districts. Consolidating the management responsibilities and professional development for all VAPA teachers into one office aligns with district office operation goals to meet industry standard protocols and practices, as well as enhancing the maintenance and efficient, intuitive, well-paced, compliant, and fiscally responsible management. As you will hear tonight, like our elementary music program, the art program will now have a lead art teacher to support art teachers in their collaborative efforts, alignment of standards, and staff development. Tonight we have Nancy Coffey, our VAPA coordinator, and Kate McKenzie, our new lead art teacher here, and they're going to share some of the highlights of the program moving forward for next year.
Thanks, Ann. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm Nancy Coffey. Thank you for inviting us to share our work with you. The restructured Visual and Performing Arts Department will serve to enhance the existing supports already in place, as well as serve to make the administration of these programs more efficient. This will be accomplished by offloading the art lead teacher portion of the previous art coordinator's job from managerial tasks. These managerial tasks will now be combined with my current responsibilities. The new elementary art lead teacher, Kate McKenzie, will be able to focus solely on curricular support for Spectra art teachers. This support will take the form of increased professional development, the establishment of collaborative teams, assure that key content standards are being taught on a continuum, differentiate instruction across all grade levels, and improve the consistency of the student experience for all schools. Similar changes have already taken place successfully in the K-12 music program, as well as the middle school and high school visual art programs. Support to middle school and high school visual and performing arts programs will continue through the structure of the current steering committees, which will also include Kate and her K-12 visual art perspective. In addition to the art lead teacher, a part-time theater arts integration specialist, Piper Legrelius, has been hired. Starting this fall, 2 schools will focus on integrating theater arts into their core curriculum. This arts integration work is not new to PAUSD. It is truly one of my passions. For the past 10 years, I have sponsored summer workshops and in-class mentoring throughout the school year to support approximately 80 classroom teachers as they learned how to integrate theater arts into their core curriculum. These teachers have developed strategies that support all learners using arts integration. I'm excited for our students and thrilled to have been given the support to expand this successful program. Here's one teacher's reflection. I have seen a huge impact on learning using the arts integrated approach in my classroom over the last 7 years. Children are more engaged, which means all children are learning. Children are having fun, laughing, smiling, which means they are also learning. I can use the same activity and use it to help teach across the curriculum, from literacy to math to science. It also helps with vocabulary, especially with ELD students. This is hands down the best training I've ever received in the district in my 15 years here. And as 2 student reflections, using these theater games showed me how to really understand a book and how to get really into a book. My favorite of these activities was the build and break of the town with acid rain. I enjoyed going into different poses. Doing this helped me understand the cause and effect of acid rain. In the future, the theater arts integration lead teacher will expand her reach to work with more elementary schools. I'm working with our research and testing office to secure a process for documenting the progress of this program. Among the 2 schools selected for next year, we have already identified specific classroom and specific individual students to monitor their progress. I've mentioned our new lead teacher, Kate McKenzie. I'm thrilled to be working with her next year. Kate is currently an art teacher at Pally and will be our new elementary visual art lead teacher. Kate will now share with you some of the work that we have already begun.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kate McKenzie. I've been a district high school art teacher for 17 years. The last 11 spent developing a four-year 2D art program at Pally. When I was asked by my department head to apply for the lead elementary art position, I had mixed feelings, especially because I love what I do. However, I also understood that the district was making critical changes, and someone with understanding of curriculum, art, and district values needed to step up and become involved. Additionally, I am dedicated to the district and its arts programs, and knew I had experience that could be helpful. First, I'm a working artist. I have an MFA in studio art, years of experience exhibiting my personal paintings. I know the creative process, and as a teacher, know how to teach the creative process. The majority of my experiences at the high school level and also the college level, where for 6 years I taught art history, studio classes, art appreciation, and art education classes in the credential program at SF State. The range of classes, but I've also taught at the elementary and middle school levels. The range of classes I have taught give me understanding of the big picture. What do we want for our students? Where do we begin? And where do we envision ending up? I also have a master's in art education with emphasis in curriculum development. My first job was assisting the woman hired by the San Francisco Unified School District a while back to develop a comprehensive sequential art curriculum. I witnessed and participated in a year of that process and hope to create an equal sense of vision and engagement with the Spectra art teachers in the coming year. In fact, my first goal with the Spectra art teachers is to create a harmonious work environment where the artists see the value of the work we need to undertake and trust in the process of looking at what we teach and how we can do it best. In light of that goal, I met with the Spectra art teachers on May 23rd for an hour-long meeting in which I introduced myself, listened to their concerns, helped them define some of their successes, and talked about the mission of a sequential Spectra art program. This leads me to my second goal, which is alignment. The aim is vertical and horizontal alignment throughout the district, including sequential curriculum that scaffolds projects for each level, allowing for continuing growth and creative exploration in all of our students. The projects may vary, but goals, guiding concepts, exploration of essential materials, critical thinking, and inclusion of the state standards will be consistent at grade level and across schools. With regard to the state standards, first and foremost, the state standards emphasize open-ended creative thinking. They also emphasize critical thinking about the process, and reflective thinking about the role of art in our lives. We will look at all of these areas and work hard to incorporate them at each level. In light of understanding my job better, I've met with Nancy Coffey in the past weeks to discuss the lead elementary art teacher position and to plan approaches to effectively undertake the job. Also in preparation, I worked with Emily Marshall for 2 days last week. We went through and sorted the majority of materials in the art ed office. We also planned ways in which we could work together as a team. I'm hoping that Emily can help us establish a web presence of Spectra lessons and examples. Additionally, last week, Emily, Nancy Coffey, and I met with the Palo Alto Art Center staff, where we discussed the successes of this past year's district art exhibit at the center and looked at ways to improve both the show and the hanging process. I believe that both Nancy and I were surprised at the incredible impact the Art Center staff believes that the district show has on the community, as well as the larger region, including on teachers and hundreds of students who visit and talk about the work every year. Next year, we will begin with a 4-hour professional development day. We will begin looking at the strengths of the program and of our incredibly dedicated artists and teachers. We will begin looking at values, goals, and begin identifying the ideas and units around which a sequential curriculum could be formed and organized, especially considering the new state standards. This work will continue in a mandatory monthly 3-hour professional development meeting. Additionally, I will spend time in Spectra classrooms to help grow understanding where needed. I look forward to a very fruitful year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Dauber, do you have any questions?
I don't. I appreciate the effort that staff is making to identify efficiencies, and I think this illustrates well the benefits of doing that to move those resources closer to the teaching mission of the district. So thank you.
Ms. Payne-Caswell.
Kate, can you come back up? Sure. Well, I'm thrilled. First, and Nancy as well. I first want to say that I'm thrilled about what I'm hearing so far. I know that integrating theater into the classroom does make a huge difference, and I watched Lucy Philippou and Kathleen Woods do it at Pally, and how kids that hated reading suddenly loved reading. So it can make a huge difference. I've seen it in at JLS and Connections as well, when they have a very active program to act out the Shakespeare plays, and can be very funny, but it also engages the kids in a way that they wouldn't normally be engaged. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that across the whole district and seeing it looked at as a strength to add that to the classroom, not just some sort of side project. Kate, I love to hear your plans for having a more integrated program that will link the different levels. And I thought I heard you say, there'll be a linkage between elementary and middle school. Maybe you didn't specifically say it, but I sort of heard it in how you were talking about that. Do you want to say something to that, or?
I think that's a little bit longer term goal, but I think that's a definite goal.
I think that would be phenomenal. I mean, we have some great programs, but they're not so linked together. So the program, I know that the teachers at Spectra were wondering if their jobs were going to change. And you talked a little bit about making sure they're more aligned to state standards. Are there other parts of the teacher jobs that are going to change?
Not really. Maybe, no, just the training. I think their work I think they'll understand more what the lessons they're creating, how the lessons they're creating tie to the standards better.
So I think the mandatory monthly training is awesome. I don't think it was so clearly defined as to what we were providing and what we were expecting. What about the kitting for the elementary teachers for their classes? Or are we paying for prep time for them to do their own kitting for the classroom? Oh, I mean, putting together the kits that they need to teach. Like, I don't know, I'm going to be doing tempera paint focused on Matisse. And for elementary school students, usually you have to bring it in pretty well prepared. So will the teachers be doing that? Are we going to give them time to do that? Or is Emily going to do that, or how's that going to be done?
The teachers get 20 minutes of prep time for every hour that they teach, the Spectra Art teachers. So they do receive prep time. Most of the teachers have a room now, which is fantastic, so the materials and equipment is ready. When it's not, there is a lot more support in the classroom to have the materials ready, but they will have 20 minutes for every hour of teaching time that they have.
Okay, and that's great. And the programs like Cultural Kaleidoscope and Project Look and Meet the Masters and all these programs, how are they going to be handled now?
All continuing.
Okay.
Emily will oversee, Emily has seen the scheduling of those 3 programs.
Okay, so they will all, and then the curation of the wonderful Palo Alto Arts Center Youth Art Show and the regular curation in the district office so that there's a regular stream of artwork, how will that be handled?
As well, and similar to the art coordinators' change of duties, the budgeting, the scheduling, the communications, a lot of those things that Emily was doing will come into my office. So Emily is freed up to do even more curation. We're actually going to deploy her to the high schools one day a week, one high school each for a day to help the high school art teachers do more display, because that's one thing they never get to, and that's one thing they asked for. So we'll get more of that.
And I think there's probably a huge opportunity to provide some curation opportunities for high school students that might be interested in that.
True, she could mentor those students.
All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate this.
Mr. Collins?
It sounds like visual and performing arts are in good hands. So I'm happy to hear that. I think this is a good example, or hopefully it will be a good example of even where we have well-established practices and programs that we like, that there are opportunities to re-examine them and figure out if there are ways to do them better, and that sometimes they'll go way better. I hope this one does. Sometimes we'll break them, but when we break them, we can fix them. So I think it's really important, and something I hope that we see more of next year and going forward, that we do examine a lot of our past practices and figure out how we can continuously improve on how we do things, and especially in ways that make things more efficient and push resources toward instructional support and toward the classroom. Because I think that's really where we have the most, that's where the rubber meets the road, that's where the most impact happens. And I think the more we aim in that direction, the better we're going to get. So it sounds like that's what's happening here, and sounds like great plans. Really look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Thanks, thank you.
Mr. Drop?
Well, thank you for your work. I know that when this reorganization was happening in the beginning, it's very difficult to see what path the future is going to bring. And recognizing as we do that the arts are essential to quality education, I think it is I feel optimistic hearing you speak about the future of the program because you're optimistic. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to shake out for our students. But I think certainly seeing how this program is now been consolidated to push the resources closer to the students is fantastic. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds. Thank you.
Thanks.
I echo my colleagues' sentiments. I'm really excited to see about the plans you have and what you guys have already accomplished. As a professional developer, I like to see the high-quality professional development that can make a difference. And it's been a concern that we've had for a while, that we have, as Spectra Art teachers, we have some wonderful artists who are so good at what they do and who love what they do, but they don't necessarily have the pedagogical knowledge or the training to know about developmental appropriateness or the standards or whatnot. So if you are folding that in and bringing that clear expertise, the resume was very impressive. I'm really glad that you are going to be leading the way on that. And I think our students and our Spectra, our teachers are in good hands. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. We are moving on to action items, and we said we were going to start with some of the items that we pulled. So I guess let's just go in order. We'll start with P. Oh, look, we're starting with the budget. And Ms. Baton-Caswell, you asked to have it pulled?
Yeah, I really asked for it to be pulled because I do think the budget is such a big thing that having it on consent sort of seemed to belittle it when it's, we're doing it at the end of the year, right? I mean, I think some of the steps along the way, maybe we could have the second meeting as consent, but it just seemed like it's a bigger thing. I did want to ask, I know that you broke out some of the costs under other professional and consulting services, and I just would ask that if you could just post that along with the rest of the information that's posted.
As an attachment.
As an attachment, yeah. And we don't need to go into detail here.
Perfect. Yep.
Anybody have any other comments on the budget? Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt there's a couple of things we have to move on that one, right?
Correct.
It's a resolution.
There's 3 resolutions in the budget.
Okay, are you on that page or, here, I'm there.
Can I just move that we adopt the budget and resolutions as set forth in this item?
Oh, that's good.
Nice.
I second that.
You second it?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay, next we have, what was the next one? S, and we have a card for that, but who pulled, oh, you pulled S because of the card, right? Yes. Okay, were you also going to pull it?
No.
Salary schedule? Okay, Deborah Baldwin?
Hi, members of the board.
Can you pull the microphone closer to your face? Thank you.
Short people. Hi, members of the board. I'm here today to request a pay raise for substitute teachers, equal in percentage to what is being considered for the adult ed teachers. Like the adult ed teachers, we have had very few pay raises. In fact, I believe in 16 years there's been 2. As we're not part of any union, it's difficult to advocate for any salary increases. In the past 16 years, we've had 2. And in 2014, the district had made a verbal promise to increase our wage biannually. There was a suggestion that it was formalized and made like it would be every other year we would get an increase. Our supervisor at the time said that was not necessary, we didn't have to formalize it. And so what has happened is that this year is almost over, and I guess you're doing board, passing the budget for next year already, but the subs were forgotten. And if it's forgotten this year, it won't be brought up until next year. And only if the superintendent happens to mention it. It was not mentioned at all, even though the subs kept on asking Lori Pryor, what is happening with our pay raise? We haven't had one in 3 years. We've already seen what happens when our pay is non-competitive. We don't accept jobs. We only work for people we like, and jobs go unfilled. Assignments in special ed have been significantly impacted. It's a community issue too. As parents in the community, we expect our children to be taught every day at school. We also expect that support jobs are filled and working. But teachers have had to cope with jobs getting unfilled. They've had to switch kids around. They've had classified workers working in classrooms because there's no sub for the day. Even principals have had to pinch in, leaving their own jobs unfilled. As a community member, I wonder, is that really what PAUSD wants? And does that fulfill your mission? Besides the fact of an equity issue of being, most substitutes are older women taking this as a second career. And lots of us live in the area and are community members. I don't claim to have all the answers, but it would certainly help if subs were given a real wage increase.
Thank you very much. Okay. Board members, are there any comments or questions to staff or?
I get just one question to follow up on the comment. What has the history been? And there's a verbal promise that was supposed to have been made. I just want to know the context. if anyone
Ms.
knows.
Hendricks?
We'll be glad to get some information and provide that to you.
Thank you.
Any others?
Yeah, I mean, my comment would, I mean, I certainly appreciate the community members' comment. I would look to staff to, look to see how the current compensation for substitutes is performing in terms of, fulfilling the district's needs. And if there are issues, then I would expect staff to, to bring that forward as and suggest changes. I will move that we approve the salary schedules as set forth in this item.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, and I
Okay.
also second what he said that wasn't a motion.
Any other? We have a motion on the floor. Any other conversation about it? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay, that is S. Next one is T. I have to keep going back. T is the evaluation of external firms providing legal services. Ms. Peyton-Caswell, you pulled that one?
Yeah, I did, just because I have come across the matrices that were done, well, at least the call for input that was done over the last 2 years to the board, and I just encourage us to continue to have some sort of standard way that we're doing evaluations, and that it should be a composite. It should bring everything together in one place. It shouldn't be like Melissa's feedback and Jennifer's feedback. It should be, our council taking this all into consideration along with her feedback. Since you may be the one that's using the firm the most, your feedback may be more heavily weighed. But I think it's very important that we have some systematic way to do it. We used to have it, and as recently as the last 2 years. So how do you feel about that, Dr. Austin?
I think we would all agree that we'd like to have a consistent evaluation of our firms. I think that the existing tool is probably lacking in the grand scheme of things. I think this is something that I would suggest that we bring back up in August when we're all together.
I would love to see a better tool.
Sure.
Great. It is currently on our draft agenda for a board retreat in August to talk about legal. So in the meantime, can we approve this item?
Can I just ask, since I wasn't here last time when we discussed this, so Lozano Smith going forward will not be providing legal services to the district, is that correct?
Ultimately,
I think I read that
the
in
board will have to make a decision on that, but we are not bringing them forward after receiving the feedback from the last meeting. There are no more ongoing issues that they're touching.
Okay.
So that was not our thought at this time to bring
Got
them
it,
back.
okay.
What's the action here? Because I'm just looking at the title of it, recommend the board evaluate.
That we're evaluating it.
What are we being asked to do here?
So as per the board bylaw, you see that the superintendent and the board needs to evaluate the law firms annually. So that's the action that needs to be taken. So I provided some feedback in relation to, at the last board meeting, I provided feedback in relation to how these firms are performing. And we are completely satisfied that they meet all the criteria. I provided that recommendation, but the action needs to be from the board and the superintendent to conduct the evaluation, so.
But is there a motion that we need here?
So I'll move, because I think that we have to, if we read the board bylaw, we have to provide a successful evaluation in order to avoid doing an RFP. So I would say I move that the board certify this successful evaluation of DWK and AALR as to their legal services.
For a second.
I'll second.
Okay. I agree with that interpretation. We're just really accepting the evaluation, right, or certifying the evaluation. Okay, any other conversation on this?
Just, I hope that we can just clarify in our offsite how we're going to use the new board policy that suggests that we have RFP every 3 years.
Neither one of these.
Approved it.
You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but
How are we
every
going to
3
be
years?
using that board policy? Because we're, right now, if there's a successful evaluation, we can renew the agreement without initiating an RFP. I just want to clarify that when we talk this summer.
So I believe we did an RFP 2 years ago. But yes, we will include, it'll be a broad conversation about legal services, how we make decisions, how we're using each one, how the board
Right,
weighs
right.
in.
Yes, I would like to have that done. Okay, thank you.
Okay. That means we are on to our last one that was pulled, which I believe
I don't
is-
believe we took a vote,
Oh,
actually.
we didn't vote it?
We
Sorry.
didn't vote?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Now we voted. Whew, moving on to you.
Oh, since I pulled this, yeah, I was just not sure that I completely understood, and this is to Dr. Austin, I believe, or both Tacomi and Dr. Austin. If we use specialized services and the fee structure is different, it's some sort of negotiated fee structure, which is one of the options in the agreements that are included. How will the board oversee that, since part of our board policy says that we're supposed to approve those fees?
Yeah, I can take that. In the very rare circumstances, in fact, we've had 0 this year, that either firm required an outside or a specialist within their firm that did not fit our fee structure, we would bring that forward to the board for specific approval with more than likely the actual attorney's name, the scope of work, and the rate.
So it would be some sort of a engagement letter for that particular service?
Exactly. It'd be a very specific short-term engagement letter.
And we would get that in advance of the work?
I would say almost always yes. There are very specific kind of technical reasons why it could be a ratification if something happened in the moment. That would truly be an emergency situation. I've only seen it once. Almost always it would be something that we would know is coming, that we would want this specific advice.
Okay, and I would assume if we were in an emergency situation, you would alert board members that we were.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. I move that we renew the contracts for legal services with, for 2019-20 with AALRR and DWK.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
I have a comment, if I may.
Certainly.
It sounds like we're going to talk about this in August, but I just wanted to call out, I think along the lines of what we talked about with the VAPA thing, this is a very good area to re-examine our historical practices, because I think our historical practices are kind of weird. The idea that we're hiring lawyers in silos, and we had an RFP for special ed attorneys, we then had another RFP for different kinds of attorneys. We then had other attorneys working on bond stuff, I think without any RFP. And the fact is, they're all just lawyers. And we don't need to hire, and those are all 3 of the winners of those RFP are full service firms with practitioners and a very wide variety of things that we need. And the idea that we should restrict, you won this RFP, so we only use you for that, and you won that, so we can only call you for that. It's like, why would we do that? Why would we, what's the virtue of the board controlling access to particular firms for particular functions, especially if the billing rates are roughly comparable? So I hope that you will bring that forward when we talk in August, because my sense from talking to you and others that a lot of other districts don't do it the way we do it, and it's certainly never the way I've seen it done in the private sector. And so I'd love to re-examine this practice, and maybe we can reform our approach and make it easier for staff to access the attorneys that can do the best job to help us do our work.
In August. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Now we're moving into our agendized action items, the ones that were agendized for action. Starting with the promise.
That's my item.
Well, I don't know if it makes sense for me to do it before or after, but I wonder, and maybe I'll pose this question to my colleagues, whether or not the staff is recommending that we approve the promise, and I wonder if it's more appropriate for us to accept the promise, but I'm open
I researched this topic.
Did you?
Yes, and
Perhaps we'll talk before we pass it over to you. Okay.
do you want to
Yeah.
talk about it now? What I researched was that it's a distinction without a difference.
Okay,
And that from a parliamentary point of view,
it's just,
it's the same.
we're saying, yes, we've seen it, and it's,
You know, I think that if I look at how we've traditionally done this and why we've traditionally done this, it's important that the board supports a strategic initiative. And if it's our full strategic plan, it's even more important. And so if we accept something, I think then it's easy to say later, yeah, but we didn't approve it. And I don't think that's where we want to be.
so you're saying you feel like, even though there's no difference, it holds us more accountable if we have approved it.
I feel like it holds us more accountable.
If there's no difference,
It's, right, it doesn't matter to me either. And since they have recommended that we approve it, then let's hand it off to Dr. Austin to see if we're ready to approve it. Dr. Austin?
Okay. That actually all made sense. I'm good with this, okay. First thing, I just counted the number of times we've brought this forward, and if my count is correct, this will be the 9th time, which is good. My notes, and you're going to hear some different things tonight. I have completely neglected to call out and thank Derek Moore for his work, not only his work, but his leadership through this process. And I think it's easy to say, well, Derek's in charge of technology, so he's probably in charge of the website, which is true. But there wouldn't have been a website concept if it wasn't for Derek and his guidance to the rest of us, that a website gives more of the feel and the tone that something is never completely done, and that it's more dynamic, and that we can make some changes. But what I really saw with Derek through this is he became a hub for the district office and connected not only with other members, but helped members within the organization connect with each other. So I want to not go another minute without saying thank you. It's appreciated. The crowd erupted. All 4 of us. I want to thank all the staff that put in the time and the effort. And a lot of times you look at something like this and you can forget how it's very easy to forget who was involved. I mean, you look around this room and we're the ones that answer the questions, but we included all of our instructional leads, our principals, all of our reach groups. We looked at every existing plan that predated us. There's so much work that was incorporated into this. I just don't want to miss the fact that it was bigger than the people who are sitting in this room, and in some cases reflects years and years of work. We see the PAUSD promise as it sits tonight as a start, not an end. It's a piece of the process. It's a checkpoint. It's not a box to check. It's a checkpoint. It's one of the key parts of a bigger plan moving forward. Our staff has already transitioned into the next phase of the work, which is narrowing the scope. So what you see in the promise cannot possibly receive full attention on every single word that's written. So our next piece is to create the year 1 roadmap. So within the promise, to identify those high leverage power goals, the things that are most likely to say, if we do these things within these groups, our students are going to have a better experience. We're going to have a better outcome for our students. That can only happen if the initiatives and elements of the promise perfectly align with the goal that they intend to impact. And I would like to not only thank our team, but I would like to thank our board members who have really helped me to better understand that importance of alignment as well. I've seen some drafts of where we're headed when it comes to the power goals, and I'll tell you, one of the things that we're really spending a lot of time on is making the language plain, clear, concise. If you can't state a goal in a way that you could tell somebody in a line at the store, then you don't have a good enough goal. And if your initiatives can't directly point up to that goal and down to the metric that you're hoping to impact, then you're off base. So what you see right now is the bigger picture, but like anything else, we're trying to narrow and be more specific when we come back in August. So that is our timetable, is that when we come back in August, we can really look at those specific goals. Where applicable, we want to have precise metrics that'll be predetermined, scheduled for routine review, and designed to inform our decisions. And keeping in mind that not everything in a school district is tied to a number. So we're trying to find both quantitative and qualitative. In some cases, we have to remember that relationships are what we're trying to impact, and those are sometimes difficult to measure. A satisfaction survey gets at that somewhat, but I'm not sure it gets completely to the heart of how we change a kid's life, how they feel about themselves. That's more challenging, and that will be part of our work. It's an important part of our work. Along those lines, I'm also working with people to think about how we can look at old problems differently, not only through our approach, but how we measure them. We've already talked about things like DNF list. DNF list is a different measure than we've used in the past, but more importantly than identifying the DNF list is what are we going to do when we find kids on it? That's the real work. I was meeting with a teacher from one of our high schools here just recently about the difference between saying that we have open access and we're recruiting kids in and the data that supports it. So as an example, one way of measuring advanced placement or honors or whatever it is that we want to look at on that end of things is to take the number of juniors and seniors combined and then compare that to the number of tests taken. And anything over a 1-to-1 ratio is seen as pretty strong. And when I looked at the preliminary data on that, we're about double that with our school district population. And yet with our HUR students, we're about a 0.3. That's very rough math, and that's rough math I did on my board, but it's not off by much, I can tell you that right now. Yet that's not a measurement we've used. I think that's a strong measurement. And that's not a measurement of saying all kids should be in AP. It's a measurement to say the disparity between HUR and non is massive. For everything that we're going to look at, we're going to look at the more granular levels of going down and saying, how does this impact not only our kids, but how does that affect your kid? How does that affect your child that you're bringing here? Because if we want to look at everything in the aggregate, this is the best district on the planet. And it's a darn good district, but we have some gaps. And these metrics are things that I think that we can identify. I do not think that the human side and the quantified side are mutually exclusive. I think we can impact that whole child in ways that could be really pretty exciting. Working with Chris Kohler, one of the things that we're working on the most right now is creating an actual schedule so that we can tell the board, here are the multiple opportunities you're going to see certain data. Here's data that comes in earlier or later. One example of progress is we have just about completed our A through G report for this year already. Wow. That's about 7 months earlier than typical, and with a much higher much higher expectation that the information is accurate and detailed. So we're making good progress, and I don't want to lose sight of that progress. So with that, I'm going to stop and again thank the board for their engagement in this topic throughout the entire process.
Thank you. Mr. Drop.
Thank you, Dr. Austin and staff. I think that this document has come a long way since the first time we saw it 8-9 meetings ago. And you know, it's really evolved as you stated. There's been so much involvement with the community, with every level of the district, that it's been a really fantastic process about building what our strategic vision is for this district. A sustained effort, I think, to address concerns that were brought up. I think we got, it seems at least, that many of a substantial number of our emails to the board and and comments on any given meeting were about the promise. And the fact that we had that sort of sustained engagement from the community is really telling of the importance of this document and the importance that we, of course, and staff as well, gave the process. The one thing that I would like to acknowledge is going forward, I think this is a really great opportunity for us, as it is in this website format. Sort of as we're transitioning to more modern approaches to things in the cloud and whatnot, I think that it's a great opportunity for us to build a little bit of the type of institutional knowledge that I've found to be a little lacking as a new board member. Luckily we have access to former board members, and Ms. Bain-Caswell has been on the board for some time, and she has that institutional knowledge. But in 9 years, when nobody here is going to be on the board, and in 60 years when Dr. Austin finally retires,
You're pretty old.
But when that time comes, I think it will be really helpful to see for future board members, for future community members and district staff, the way that the promise has evolved. I know that Ms. Bain-Caswell has talked about the idea of a hard copy, and I think this is a sort of, an evolution of that idea, I think, or at least that's how I took it, to build the sort of process and the red lines that we make meeting by meeting and year by year in a database, so that at some point in the future, board members can go back and look at what the changes were at a specific point in time. Because I think the process really reflects the community and our pedagogical priorities at the time. And those things change, but those things are very cyclical too. And there'll be a point in time where we'll want to come back and see how are we addressing this? How did we change this goal in 2019, 2018 when this was going on? And I think it would be really helpful to track that. So I know that there are many ways we could do it, but I would just put that idea up there as we are going to evaluate this on a yearly basis. Maybe something for next year as we go through it, meeting by meeting, tracking those changes, and then having a compendium of our year by year changes. So we're just sort of building that institutional knowledge.
Thank you. Mr. Dauber?
I appreciate all the work that has gone into this and the thinking. I think there's a lot in here which is very insightful about what we need to do. I think the rubber will meet the road next year. The point of the plan is to actually impact students. So I am looking forward to some really significant discussions about what that plan beginning in August looks like, and how we use metrics to really produce the kind of accountability and management that I think we are looking for. My sort of vision of us as a well-functioning board is to identify those concrete goals and those metrics, and to really be able to say with certainty to the community, we met our goals or we didn't meet our goals, and so forth. I personally will be, in addition to the, to many of these items, I will confess that I will be particularly focused.
Let me guess.
What is he going to say?
Sopec's not even here.
Yeah, that's true. On the logo, no, not on the logo. On how we are addressing issues that produce stress for students, around sleep, around homework, around test and project scheduling. I think those are sort of unfortunately evergreen issues for us, and that there's a lot in the promise about excellent teaching and so on, which I think is really critical, but we won't get the benefits of that for students unless we pay attention to making sure that they have the kind of well-being that you need to be an excellent learner. And so I will be paying particular attention to that, just fair warning to Dr. Austin and my colleagues on that topic. But thank you so much this is work well done.
Ms. Bain-Caswell?
Yeah, so I appreciate that things that have been brought up along the way have been incorporated in various ways. I think it would be a good idea to have some sort of way to track over time. It doesn't have to be hard copy, I just needed hard copy to follow it. But it would make sense. That is how every organization I've ever worked in looks at the history of how things have evolved over time. Even, if you write software, you can go back and look at what changes were made at what time. So there are systems to do it, and we could use an existing system. We don't have to invent our own way to do that. I want to touch on a couple of things that I just want to make sure that we cover. And before I say that, I want to say I'm very interested in what metrics you're going to bring back to us as year one goals and what the metrics and how you're going to measure that. I think that is going to be telling on whether this is a plan that is a workable plan or a plan that we just enjoy up on the web. So August meeting, we're going to get some sort of presentation or?
I can tell you for myself and for our team sitting here and for all of our principals, the metrics that are going to be used are going to be directly tied to evaluations. So I think we're going to have some high interest in producing positive outcomes. And I want to back up for 1 second. I just said positive outcomes. I've told our team as we've started meeting through this, reporting outcomes accurately is more important than reporting positive outcomes. And
Thank you very much for saying that.
yeah, we all have to live that, right? And I have to live it, the board has to live it, our principals, everyone has to live that. But, for an example, I want to sidetrack us too much. I want to give you one specific example. This year's third grade class will have some test scores to go along with some other information that we already have about the first cohort of kindergarten kids. We've already thought of ways that we want to break that out, we want to measure, and this will be our first time to say this class either looks the same or different, positive or not, than the classes that didn't have it all the way through. We're going to report what it is. So just like a dissertation, you don't go in trying to prove a point. Data are, and whatever it is, we're going to present.
Well, that's terrific. And I also think if we have, I like the term power goals, hopefully they're few enough that people can wrap their heads around them. Because when there's too many, people can't wrap their heads around it, and then you sort of get lost in the minutia. I do, though, think having a philosophy document, which is what I think this is helpful so that people understand where those power goals came out of. With that in mind, and I asked you some of these questions ahead of time, but let's go through them if you don't mind. Let's start with dyslexia. I thought that presentation last week was excellent, and I said it then, and I'll say it again. But I do think there's some commitments we will probably have to make financially or structurally in order to make that happen. Should I expect to see that in the power goals? I don't really see it specifically in this philosophy document.
You're going to see two things. In the power goals, if dyslexia is one, and I think we've heard loud and clear, it's a huge lever, so of course it will be. Not only the power goals with the specific initiatives lined up underneath them, but our investment in those. One of the reasons I was joking about watching city council meetings is, I watched last night's, and I thought they did a pretty good job about saying specifically what they wanted to invest in. They narrowed it down to a couple things. They made it very clear. I think it's a pretty good model for us to kind of connect investment, not only of time, energy, but dollars.
That's excellent. Thank you. The other area is under equity and excellence. I am hearing over and over again how in order to have successful performance, you also have to have students that feel like they're confident and they're actually providing something that wouldn't be here if they weren't here. And one of those things is owning and leading on something. And I think we have been very active about making sure a lot of resources are available, whether they're perfectly targeted or whatever, could be argued. But our focus has been on that, but not necessarily on how to make those students feel really empowered by owning something. And so I encourage staff to think about that when they're thinking about the AVID program or any of the other programs that are supposed to be sort of bootstrapping that group, to think it's not enough to just give them tutoring, give them support. They need to be empowered in some way, and we should think about how we can do that. So I encourage that. And then the other is having different transportation options for students after school is excellent. Let's make sure that they know where they can get support when they're staying later after school, because particularly our kids who have parents that are working multiple jobs that don't have supports at home for doing their work, or maybe have to come home and do the laundry and take care of their sisters and brothers, and they have so many things at home that they don't have the space to do their homework. I think that we then have to think about how to support them to do that. And then just my last thing, in terms of just regular enrichment programs beyond the arts, what is staff thinking about that? Because it's not really reflected in this philosophy document.
Couple things. Right now, I don't think there's a plan for expansion. It's maintaining existing programs.
Well, I think the existing programs are pretty excellent, so.
They are excellent. So
Okay.
probably be silent with an expectation that they are maintained.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Thanks. Yeah, this is good. I think the value, I always find the value in these kind of documents is mostly in the process of the team that put it together, because it forces a lot of hard thinking and kind of trying to figure out whether and how everybody can be on the same page. And it looks like that was certainly true here, and I know that the team did a lot of work to get it to this point, so that's great. It seems like you got the value. I associate myself with Mr. Dauber's comments. I mean, this is good, but words on a website don't change any student's experience. So the trick is converting these good intentions into actual initiatives with budgets that convert into classroom experiences and life experiences for our students. So that's the whole game. And then, for us as a body and as you as a leadership team, saying how do we measure that we're actually doing that, and are we actually getting the things that we want out of it, and is it working the way we thought it would? If not, what do we need to do differently? What's working even better? What should we double or triple down on? I mean, those are all the fun things we'll have to work with in the years going forward. But there's no skipping the step. So we had to do it, and now we've done it. And then going forward, we'll be rocking and rolling on actual execution. So that'll be great. I know that's what you guys love too. So so thanks for bringing this forward.
Thanks to you and the staff. It has come quite a long way, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And I'm excited to see how we turn it into action next year. There are inputs and outputs here, and I think that they are both really important. I know there's a lot of focus on what our outputs are, but I just don't think this is a by any means necessary kind of situation. Yes, we have to get it done, but how we do it matters, and how we do it has a big impact. And I want us to be looking at the impact of each of the things we're doing. So really laying out the actions that we are committed to, right, you're calling it a promise, right? So here are the actions that we are committed to take in order to get these outcomes. And really tying those two together so we can really identify which are the inputs we're doing that are making a difference. I think is really important and is really what will move the work. There's the work. I think that it's something that we've struggled with in the past, that we've tried an intervention with a student and we didn't get the outcome we wanted. And is it because we did the wrong thing, or is it because we had to do twice as much of the thing that we did? So should we do more of it, or should we lean out of it? And hopefully with these spelled out inputs and looking at what we're trying to measure, we're going to get better at knowing that answer. And like you said, looking at this cohort that's third grade now, and the actions that we've taken and the very specific assessments we've done along the way, the formative assessments, hopefully we'll start to inform our work in a way that will be really useful. So thank you for all this work. I look forward to seeing those next steps, those power goals, and how we're getting there. Thanks.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion?
I move that we, what did we decide?
We decided to approve.
Approve the promise as presented.
And I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Awesome. Okay, our cell tower resolution is B, and I don't know if you guys have anything to say about this. We discussed it last time, and it's just up for a vote. It is not on the consent calendar because it's a resolution, and we have had conflicting information about this, but we believe that a resolution has to be in action, not consent.
I'm just going to add to that.
Okay.
I believe that I want to get a better answer about resolutions.
Okay.
There you go, another summer project.
By August,
We'll know this.
by August, we will have an absolute concrete, here's how we're going to handle resolutions.
So this would have gone on consent had we thought that that would be fine.
Can I move that we approve the resolution number 2018-19.19 in support of cell tower placement restrictions in areas in proximity to Palo Alto schools?
Second.
I do have a question for
Yes,
staff.
I believe you weren't here last week, were you? No, you
I
weren't.
was not here for this item, but can I ask what the status of the discussions, if any, there are with the city about, how we're going to handle this in the future? Or is this resolution going to fall on ears that are already primed and in conversation, or are we not in a good spot with the city?
The last I've heard, and I speak to the city manager routinely, including today, they are looking at a 300-foot setback, so more than 2 and less than 1,500.
Did they vote on that last night?
I don't know if they voted on that last
That was on
time.
their agenda to vote for
It
last night.
turned off at a certain point.
So they threw in a 300-foot setback that hadn't been previously discussed, and it was on their agenda last night.
If your question, Mr. Dauber, is do we expect this to be impactful in a way that changes the current situation, my honest answer would be probably not.
Yeah, so I think that's something I'm sure this will pass, but I think there's work to be done in convincing city to sort of take appropriate account of the issue here. And I hope that community members in Palo Alto reach out to their elected officials on the city side to, express their concern about safety. This is, at root going to be something that if the community in Palo Alto doesn't want cell towers like this in close proximity to schools, then, they can, I'm sure that they have the means at their disposal to put pressure on their elected officials and make that happen. I hope that this encourages them to do that.
Mr. Dauber, I'm sorry, I misspoke on one part of what I just said. I don't think it's going to impact the setback. I do think it has already impacted the city's acknowledgement that we have some communication things that can be improved, including notifying the school district if there are things like this that could impact schools or families. So I don't want to say that we'll have no impact. That's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to say something similar. At City School Liaison, we discussed the resolution, the aspects of the resolution, and that one of them talks about really continual improvement of the communication between the two bodies in both directions. I think that there's probably stuff we've done that, we haven't told city about when it might have been a good idea. And so as you will see in your summary of our last meeting, one of the things that the City School Liaison Committee is doing is working on redefining our roles and our goals and trying to make sure that's something that we better structure that two-way communication, making sure we know. On the other side, about putting pressure on City Council, far be it for me to ask anybody not to put pressure on City Council, but there is a federal regulation that prohibits local governance from making a setback due to health and safety. about these. So I think that it's one of the reasons I believe they came to us was so that there would be lots of pressure points because the city council is limited on the action that they can take for specific reasons.
Okay, well, I'll certainly let them sort that out, but obviously, communication that we're going to do something you don't like is, I suppose it's good, but it's not as good as actual dialogue about
It's a
how to
start.
address the issue. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that update.
Yeah, okay. We have a motion in a second. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Oh, that's not my pencil. Okay, C, I believe we have 2 cards for C. Can you cue this up for us? Maybe, well, we already discussed. Is there anything else?
We have nothing else to add. We've discussed this last time unless there's a question.
Okay, let's bring our public comment up. Eve Sutton and Mary Bazigos. And I'm sorry if I don't know why I can't read names. Bazigos, that's what it says.
Yes, Bazigos.
Good, okay.
Yes. Hello, my name is Mary Bazigos, and I'm
not here.
an instructor at the Palo Alto Adult School. I teach English as a second language. I've taught at Palo Alto for over 16 years. So up until now, because we were hourly employees and not under contract, we were told that we were not eligible to join the union, which meant that we couldn't negotiate on our behalf. Our adult school principal over the years negotiated for small raises on our behalf occasionally. Now that we've joined the union, we'd like to thank you for voting to approve the raise that the district negotiated with the Palo Alto Educators Association. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is Eve Sutton here to make a comment?
Thank you. Yes, I'm still Eve Sutton. I wanted to explain in particular detail, because I know it's of interest to the board, how we got into this little crack. We have a contract with Palo Alto Educators Association that includes us for certain of the clauses, certain of the articles, and excludes us from other articles. So in particular, we are included as far as having PAEA represent us as far as the contract goes. But they don't collect dues for us, which means we can't join the union, although lately we figured out a way to join the union. So we went this many years, many decades actually, we went decades without being able to pay dues even when we wanted to, so we couldn't negotiate our salary. That's how we got in that little crack. We were represented by the union and our salary was included in the contract, but we couldn't negotiate our separate adult ed salary schedule. So in case you need the citations, the critical parts are Article 3, Section F, the agency fee and dues deductions. Page 4 of the contract specifically says that the agency fee provision shall apply to all members of the bargaining unit except for all hourly adult education teachers and all part-time employees on less than 50% assignment. Then we go back to Article XX, Article 20 for hourly adult education teachers, and if you read through that section, you'll see that we have the right to join the union. So that's where it got caught in the district's negotiations with the teachers this last several months. So now we have it cleared with the union that we can join. We've joined as a separate section of the union, so we're negotiating our salary separately from the K-12 salaries. And if you have any other questions, I have the whole contract. I'd be willing to explain it. But thank you so much for your support in working through these difficulties as we move towards something closer to equitable salaries with the K-12 system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Ms. Payton-Caswell.
I'm just happy that we could have worked through this with you this year. And Ms. Hendricks, I just encourage you to, if there's still any problems with how the wording is in the contract, to maybe work on that this year. Thank you.
Mr. Collins.
I move that we approve the tentative agreement as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Mr. Drop, any comments? Mr. Dauber. Okay, I don't have anything. All those in favor? Aye. Great, thank you. Okay, 2%, one time off schedule. Anything to add to this?
No.
We've discussed this at the last meeting. Any questions, Mr. Dauber? Or maybe a motion?
No, I move that the board approve the superintendent's 0% salary increase and 2% off-schedule payment as set forth in this item.
A second.
Any conversation?
I enthusiastically endorse the 0% ongoings.
Thanks.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, okay. Amendment to employee agreement for superintendent. If you remember, we're not altering the contract, we are adding an amendment to the end of it. Mr. Drop?
No, I move that we approve the amendments to the contract.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Hang on 1 second. I think you have a.
Oh, I have to read it, right, I have to read it out, right? I marked it off here, right here.
No raise for you?
No, I seriously,
That's this one up.
let's not mess this one up.
Did I hear 6 yes votes?
Sorry, everyone. Okay, we have our motion. I am now going to read. The board in this agenda item will be considering amendments to the employment agreement with the superintendent of schools. The financial terms of this contract are the following. Compensation. In consideration for the services provided under the employment agreement, the superintendent of schools will receive an annual base salary of $309,000. The annual salary represents step 2 of the attached salary schedule. And fringe benefits, the superintendent shall receive district-paid health, dental, vision, and other fringe benefits in the same manner and subject to the same limitations as other contracted management personnel, as those benefits may change from time to time. Again, I ask, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Great. Thank you for that. Okay, we are done with our action items, which means we are on to information. If you remember, information items don't have any report attached to them, and they are really included here both for our information and to elevate them to the general community. I'm sure there's going to be one or two that someone has a question or wants to talk about, but I'm going to open it up for all 7A through F. Mr. Drop, do you have anything you'd like to, I'm supposed to start with you, Mr. Collins. Do you have any issue you want to talk about? Oh, sorry.
I do not.
Okay, Mr. Dauber?
I had a question about the Public Records Act. I was happy to see the decrease in the number of outstanding items. I have seen mention of an effort, maybe it's this month, to reduce the number of these, maybe to eliminate the backlog, or can you just comment on that so that
That's right.
folks know?
Thank you, Mr. Dover. We did do a sprint 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, to get rid of the 2017 requests and to eliminate some of the 2018 as well. So we have, as you can see, we have 18 from 2018, which we will be doing next week.
Great.
So, and then we'll carry on with the 2019 as well. So hopefully we will, in the next few weeks, reduce the backlog.
And I appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge that the legal expenses report shows what I think is real progress in controlling legal expenses. So thank you for that as well.
Great. Ms. Payton-Caswell.
I also want to thank you for the controls you put in place for the legal expenses. I was wondering if you have any sense of what the expenses for May looks like. Do you have any sense?
No, I have not seen the May invoices yet.
Okay, so we don't have a sense of, I had asked a while ago if by the end of the year we could see all of our legal expense categories just summarized, so we could just see what our status was year to year. I know one of the things we're trying to do is get a better control on our legal services, and that may or may not be overall less money. It might be, it might not be, but our real goal was to get better control. So I just want to make sure that we're looking at the whole thing. And we used to look at investigations along with our legal expenses because they were being done by our legal firms, I think. I think that's why we looked at them together. And so we should just see them in the context of all of our legal expenses, even though we're handling them now internally.
I think I need to ask a couple questions.
Please.
When we say all expenses, can you just be as specific as?
Things that we brought in-house, so if we have employees now doing our legal work, that's fine, just what's our expenses around that? Just so that we're looking at the total pool, or the total thing.
So I'm gonna talk out of order for just, and then I'll pass it to you. One of the comments I was gonna make was how pleased I am with the legal expense report and how you've brought them down. And that, just as a reminder, although she now works as our general counsel, Ms. Vishakan before worked for us, and she had an admin that worked for us. So the delta between what she cost to the district as someone who took care of our PRA requests and some other stuff is not nearly as big. So I just want to be careful about how we quantify that, because that was money that we were already putting out.
So maybe we need to make sure that, we were looking at the PRA requests as part of our legal expenses. Before we had Comey in this role, we had a variety of different ways we were trying to solve this, and one of them was using our law firms. So I'm not looking at this as, a gotcha at all. I'm looking at this as, let's just be well aware of what we're spending and how it looks now.
A suggestion, it may or may not be a useful one, is maybe you could do a template that says, this is the report I'm looking for. Because I know you've asked for this over and over, and, I think you feel like it comes back in dribs and you're not getting what you want. But if you drew out the table, maybe they could just fill it in.
Would that be helpful?
I think that is a great path.
I can easily do that.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Is that it for you? Okay, Mr. Collins.
I too wanted to thank you for making progress on the CPRA request. I think that's great, long overdue. I'm super excited that you're going to drive it down even more. And hopefully we have now kind of, slain the beast, and we can kind of stay on top of this going forward. I think that would be a great accomplishment. Similarly, on Title IX, the Title IX office reports, I don't know how many people look at these in the community, but our overall logged we call this the Title IX update, but it's a larger set of complaints and issues that have been identified that require investigation. And the overall number and the subset of those that are in fact Title IX complaints is down, I think, about 40% from last year, down significantly. And the timeliness of the investigations and the handling of the investigations at the appropriate level, some at the site, some of the Title IX officer, and now fewer and fewer sent to outside investigators, I think shows, a real maturing of the process. And I did want to call out, because when Ms. Hendricks last year, when she was interim superintendent, said that this was going to happen this year, and that we were going to be able to reduce the expense in the Title IX office, I was skeptical. And I think I said so at the time. And I want to point out that I was wrong, and Ms. Hendricks was absolutely right, and we have absolutely what she said was going to happen is what's happened, and I think it's great. So I'm very pleased that we have, I think we went through a good maturation process where we said, hey, we're really not doing our job here. We need to cast a much wider net, find out what's out there, get it under control, log it all accurately, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then, work to, I know Ms. Farrell in the Title IX office has done a tireless job training the organization. I don't know how many trainings she's done, but a lot. And I think that is paying big dividends in terms of not only fewer the items being properly reported and investigated at the site, but just fewer incidents, which obviously is the best thing, because we're kind of proactively everybody's now aware of what these things are and watching out for the behaviors and cutting them off before they happen. So I think it's a real success story in terms of taking us from a situation where we're not in legal compliance and not doing the things that are best for our students to where now we really are. And now I think we, for my money, we represent a real exemplar of what school districts should be able to do on these kinds of complaints. So I just wanted to call out what a great job that was. Thank you.
Okay, just one note of, because we all have paper copies of this, in your, and I should have started with this, in your 7E, the Title IX office reconfiguration, it actually calls out Ms. Farrell's position as a director position, but that's actually the salary step that she's at, or the pay structure. At the beginning, in consent, we approved the Title IX sort of restructuring, and that calls it out as an officer. She's our Title IX officer, and that's her appropriate title, I believe, right? But we're the only ones that have that. Online was posted correctly. This went to print before the online version. Legal expenses, I already mentioned. I'm really glad to see. I guess we're also going to see all-inclusive what we spend, but it's clear that just having someone paying attention to it and holding us all accountable, right, to phone calls that are made, to work that we do, to billing that comes in, and keeping track of it as we go, rather than at the end of the year, oh, look what happened. Thank you for all your work there, and for all the work you do in-house that lets us not go out. I know that if a particular site leader calls, they don't have the option of calling one of our outside legal counsel saying, could you come over here and talk to me through something? And I know that's something that you have a habit of doing. So thank you so much for that work. I think it really allows us to provide a lot more support to our staff. I already mentioned the Title IX update. PRA, thank you for your sprint last 2 weeks ago, and thank you for the upcoming sprint this summer. I think that's really, for as long as I've been on the board, it has been a thing. I'm glad that we are, just like now the minutes are no longer a thing, and they were a thing for a really long time. So thank you for that. And I was going to say something similar. I think I'm talking about the maturity of the Title IX office. The fact that it is being restructured is a testament to all the work that Ms. Farrell has done, and that we as a body have focused on this, and to all the site leaders that are doing the work site by site and are clearly now able to conduct an investigation at the site level and understand the laws, the ramifications, the structure of reporting, and really turning that over to a wider body of people to do the work, that know the site, that know the people involved. And I think it really speaks to the maturity of the department, and that's wonderful to see. So thank you to you and to Ms. Farrell and to everyone that's been doing that work. Is that it for operations? I mean, for items? Okay, is that already done? Before we started board operations, I just want to acknowledge, no pressure, but as you go through into your board operations, let's remember that it's Dr. Novak's last meeting. You may have some words for him, or you may just want to make sure we finish precisely at 8:48 so that he finally wins the bet. I'm just saying.
It's not that big of a deal.
Mr. Durant.
I don't think we'll get to 8:48.
No, but
Maybe
is it like,
underestimated you.
is it like
Please
price
do
of-
not stretch for, don't stretch on my account,
He would
please.
rather have, right.
I think Ms. Payton Caswell's first.
For operations, okay, Ms. Peyton Caswell. I usually just
Dr.
go-
Novak, thank you very much for everything that you've done this year. I think what you've really done is you've helped us put some systemization in place that we didn't have, and across multiple departments, and we will miss you. And I hope you will come back and visit us, or maybe, I don't know, video conference in or something like that.
8:48, we'll always think of
8:48, we'll always have 8:48. I don't have anything to report. I just want to thank you for everything you've done this year.
Mr. Collins.
We had a city school liaison committee, as you mentioned, and there's a report. And I believe, is this also posted online, Vicki? So there's a report also. It's a more meaty report than some of the ones in the past, and so I encourage you to read it. It particularly talks about the Cubberley item, which we discussed extensively. And, as was reported in the paper, which I think may be a first for a city school liaison committee.
Like the big time?
Yeah, we've hit the big time. I do think, coming off the city council's meeting of, what was it, a week ago Monday, and the discussion at city school, we definitely have some work to do, sorting out our our respective positions and understanding kind of how, the very fundamental question of how we, two agencies can and should work together on this project. I think the planning process, I think everybody feels that the planning process has been very fruitful in terms of raising these issues and making it very concrete. I mean, down at the drawing level, and here's the things that people need in the community input process. But now we have to like step back out and say, how is this going to work? And what is the best way for us to work together so that everyone can accomplish what they want to accomplish? So there was some discussion of that, and I'm sure this is going to be the meatiest topic at our August, September, Lapapalooza, meeting palooza with the City Council. Also, as President DiBrienza mentioned, we're going through an active process of assessing the committee's charter and purpose. That's been kind of an evolving thing the last couple years, but we are, we've now gone to the point where actually City Council Member Koo took the initiative to write up kind of a proposed revised charter for the group, which we said we'd bring back to our respective organizations. So there's going to be more discussion of that. We don't meet again until August, right? But if any of the members have feedback on this, it would be great to hear it sometime before then so that we can incorporate it into our feedback to the group. And you can see that, what is that, a Brown Act violation?
I would think so.
Then communicate to Dr. Austin. Okay, so communicate to Dr. Austin if you have feedback on that. And then,
City staff was taking the lead on that, so if you tell him, he can pass it on to.
yeah. And then we can have a discussion at the August meeting and hopefully come back with something to propose for, that they'll do the same. Anything else on that, on the liaison committee meeting?
I don't think so. We, in talking about Cubberley, one of the things we requested was that staff on both sides really talk this summer, over the next few months, about really framing up what a joint study session would look like and what we would want to get out of it, because we are in different places. So having very clear-cut goals before we sat down to meet together seems like a really important thing. So that's something that staff is going to be working on over the summer.
Yeah, as Ms. Baden-Caswell has pointed out, not all prior editions of this joint meeting have achieved the desired results, so we're going to try to do better.
Okay, that's it for you? Yes. Mr. Drop.
I've got no operations, but I wanted to thank Dr. Novak. I think, you've really helped me learn how to be a first-time board member. It's shown me a lot about the budget, just sort of taught me about district operations in general, and I really appreciate that. And personally, you've been a joy to work with, so I wish you the best in your future.
Mr. Dauber, you didn't go yet, did you?
No, I want to say I've been on the board for almost 5 years now, I think, and I don't think I've been as optimistic about the upcoming school year as I am about this one, because I think that I've seen a real productive focus on kind of operational excellence in various areas of the work. The business office is one of them, so I appreciate Dr. Novak's, but I think I'm seeing it across the organization. I think we've seen it several times tonight with the discussion we had about what's going on in the art program, the zero waste program. There's a lot of positive signs of kind of strong execution going on, and I think that's a prerequisite for us making progress. It doesn't guarantee it, but I think it is a prerequisite for it. So I'm really optimistic about next year. Really appreciate the work that all the staff members have done, those that are here and those that aren't. And I appreciate Dr. Austin. I think this has been a very productive first year, and your leadership, I think, is much of the reason for my optimism about what's coming next.
Wow. He always does this to me. Dr. Novak, thank you so much for the year that you have given us. I think it was really, the first year and a half I was on the board was with one particular CBO, and some of you were around for a lot longer. And that was sort of, I think, at least I was aware that it was possible that that was one way to look at the budget, but it was only one way to do it. But I think because we've been doing it that way for so long, it was hard to get out of that. And I really appreciate that with all of staff this year, with your direct staff and with everyone, you really had us tear it apart and look at it in a different way. And I really appreciate that perspective you've brought that will outlast you even after you are not with us anymore. I'm grateful for all the work you've done and that conservative approach you took to our budget this year. And I have nothing, I echo Mr. Dauber's thanks to everyone this year. But I think I have nothing to add, which means, yeah.
If I could,
You
I
may.
have about 12 minutes of, comments that I'm hoping that I could ask the board. In all seriousness, I really would like to thank the entire district. I've been blessed and honored to be able to work with the classified staff that is really top-notch. I'm very appreciative of that. Even working with the classified staff, or classified and the certificated staff, we have great staff in Palo Alto, so I'm very appreciative of that. I have great leaders in the business services department. It makes my job a lot easier when I have good management. Working with a cabinet that is extraordinarily talented, intelligent, challenging. We work really well together as a team. That makes it fun and makes us a lot more productive. That's great. Having a leader like Dr. Austin, I echo exactly what you said on that. He's the reason for a lot of the things that have happened this year, and great things are going forward. And this board, I mean, you're an amazing board. I mean, it's just really been fun to work with the board. You're very challenging. You look at things very carefully, and you keep us on our toes. So I want to thank you for that. It's been a growing year for me. It's odd for me right now. I've been looking back. I don't think I've had one day where I've been unemployed since I think I've been 15 and a half. And so for me to not have an employer on July 1st is kind of odd to even think of that. Not sure exactly what the future holds. I know I'm going to continue to be working in some fashion. So we'll see where it goes, but it's exciting for me. But I want to thank you for what you've given to me in this last year too. So let me see. And
You want to talk a
let
little
me
bit
go
about your
back
work on
to
the
where I
golf?
started my career. And yeah, with that, you can end the board meeting early. I'll concede.
everyone
Please
can-
don't do that. I'd rather you end the board meeting early.
And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.